my name is Dermot. I'm Dermot Dinan. I'm from ChemDoc. And just introduction to the webinar today. Tell you this is not a technical webinar on COSHH. So I'm not going to be looking at workplace exposure limits or decide when or when you should not do IH monitoring, etc. The purpose of this webinar is to help you put a good COSHH management system in place. So that will help you get your up to date now and keep them up to date going forward. It's based on our 10 years experience in the industry. We have 5 or 6 consultants within the company who will be working out on site, updating systems for clients, etc. And it's based on their experience in all types of industries: food and beverage, healthcare, all types of manufacturing, education, etc. Slight differences between different industries. Ultimately, the fundamentals of the same system works the same between all of them. One of the first things I like to cover before I start talking about the system is just talk very briefly about safety data sheets and COSHH assessments. Ultimately, what is the difference between the two? Because a problem that I found and that our consultants have found is when on site people, we often hear people talking about getting a COSHH data sheet, or they need to download their COSHH assessments. And ultimately possibly not understanding the difference between a safety data sheet and what a COSHH assessment is. So first of all, a safety data sheet, it's a 16-section document that is used by the chemical manufacturer. So you don't have to write this. This is written by the chemical manufacturer. It's written to a standard. It's written in the UK to a European standard. There's 60 sections, and it is by the manufacturer. So what COSHH assessment then is, a COSHH assessment is basically a risk assessment of how you use that chemical in the work environment. So it's taking the information from the safety data sheet and applying that to your local environment, the quantities you use, how you use it, where it's used, etc., and come up with recommendations, etc., locally for your site and how you use it. But assessment is written in-house, locally for your site by yourself. It's not something that you can just go to the manufacturer and get a COSHH assessment off them. A COSHH assessment is a risk assessment that you do on the chemical on your own site. Regulations are UK regulations. You will find a lot of people outside of the UK will talk about COSHH because even though it is a UK regulation, it's as a standard in a lot of countries where they don't have as tight regulations on it. But COSHH regulations themselves are UK regulations. So a data sheet, it is a document produced by the manufacturer that you just have to source the manufacturer, and a assessment is a risk assessment of that chemical and how you use it that you have to produce on your site to keep your staff safe. So what I want to do here is, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to outline basically the fundamentals of put a good COSHH management system. You know the 8 points I'm going to go through. I'm not going to list them all out now. They're there for you. But as I said, it all ties into what this should give you if you implement this system is you get your assessments up to date now, also a system in place to keep up to date for the future. The first to start with is to document your structure. List what are your departments / areas within your organization. One mistake that I would see is people would start off by listing chemicals. I start departments first. Regardless of what chemicals are on site, look at the departments as if you're organizing them for your quality or for HR or for any other function. List out your departments. And then following out from that, you can go looking at chemical. You can look at what chemicals are within them. If you have a multi-site structure, so if you have maybe 2 or 3 sites, obviously allow for that. You have site A and 3 departments within that, site B 4 departments within that, etc. So start off by listing out your full your structure, departments, and your sites and your departments, etc. The next thing when you've organized your structure is training roles. So for each department that you outline, person to be a COSHH leader within that department. This is something you'll see me coming back to over and over again throughout this presentation, and I'll actually mention it again at the very end, is staff involvement is absolutely key to a good COSHH management system. Yes, it is important for somebody maybe in an EHS role or at the top to drive it and to lead it, but they do all the work. You have to get people on the who are actually using the chemicals and involved in the processes to get them involved as much as possible in managing the COSHH assessments and managing safe strategies, etc., so that they're taking ownership for it. So after you put together your structure, I would say you should assign at least one person each department to be a COSHH leader for that department. Have a list of departments and have a list of departments, and you have a list of people that are taking responsibility in each of those. The next step then is you need to get a list of all chemicals that are used within each department. A common mistake we will see is that maybe an EHS person will send an email to each department and say, can you give me the list of chemicals you have? And what can often happen is you will get information back. One person could put together maybe a 6-column Excel file with an awful lot of detail on it and maybe do more work than you even needed. Another person could give you a very brief name which doesn't give you enough information. To try and tie the whole thing together, what I would say is you decide what information you need first. And I'll come to that here. So this is kind of the information that you need. But you decide that first and maybe put together a simple Excel template with maybe 3 or 4 columns that you need, and set out to the departments and get them to fill it in. So don't ask them for the list of chemicals. Tell them specifically what information you want. So the information you want is you want the select name. So you can there, instead of just saying bleach, the full name say Domestos Bleach Original, because if you just say bleach, or even if you just say Domestos bleach, Domestos have maybe 30 or 40 different variations of bleach. And you need to, when you're doing your COSHH assessment and sourcing your safe data sheet, you need to know you're doing it for the right product. So you need to have the absolute full product name. Manufacturer name, which is preferable to the supplier. So the manufacturer name will give you the definite product. And if you have maybe an R&D laboratory or a quality laboratory, if you're looking for laboratory chemicals, then the code is essential. So all laboratory suppliers, the likes of VWR, Sigma, etc., they will use unique codes for every product, and that is essential really for sourcing laboratory chemicals. Because again, if you take something like acetone, we have literally hundreds of different grades of that, and the only way of knowing you have the exact right product is by using a product code. So you put it, you send that out to the departments, to the COSHH leaders we've identified. We get them to fill out their inventory, and we would say then, before you start writing your COSHH assessments, code that data. So pull that data into one place so that you have one list of all chemicals by department. So now you have all your chemicals by department, and you have it in one central place. The next, you need to go out to the manufacturers of all those chemicals, and you need to source the safe data sheets. The reason I have said there to pull them together centrally is mainly it is duplication of products, and also less obvious duplication of manufacturers. And what that means is, if you, for example, the bleach we mentioned in the previous slide, have a common cleaning product like that, and it could be used maybe in 4 to 5 departments in your business. You have 4 different people all going off sourcing that same safe data sheet, because it's a duplication of work. If you put them together centrally, one person will see this is used in 4 departments, and they'll go get the safe data sheet once and assign it to all 4. And also, the less obvious duplication of manufacturers, because most of the work when sourcing safe data sheets isn't in getting individual safe data sheets, it is in contacting individual manufacturers So you have 5 products from one manufacturer. You make 2 using this department, 3 using another department. It makes sense to contact that manufacturer once, source 5 safe data sheets to get off the manufacturer, and then assign them out internally. If you follow that, if you are delegating the work, so if you're saying, yes, well, I'm collating them centrally, but I don't have one person who has time to source all the data sheets, then not by department, but by manufacturer. So instead of saying, okay, you're going to source the safe data sheets for the maintenance department, and you're going to source them for another department, what is maybe, okay, you go source the safe data sheets for these 10 manufacturers, and then the next person will source the safe data sheets for these next 10 manufacturers, and put it all together then in the end and distribute them then to the departments. Safe data sheets. Very important that you source them direct from the manufacturers. It's the only place to go for your safe data sheets. Very often you will you buy your products maybe from a supplier, and it's prudent not to go to the supplier for the safe data sheet, because you're counting on the fact that they would have got the safe data sheet, that they would have got the correct one, and they would have updated that in the last year, 2 years, etc. So you may go to the manufacturer, they may give you what looks like a good safe data sheet, but to the supplier may not have gone to the manufacturer in the last 4 or 5 years to update that. Where if you go to the manufacturer, you're always getting the most up-to-date safe data sheet for your product. So when you source your safe data sheets, I would say you just record some basic information in about them as well. So maybe in that same Excel file where you've listed out your products by department, just record at the very least what the rate of the safe data sheet you sourced is, and then you source that safe data sheet. So again, most of the work in getting safe data sheets is in finding out where do I go for it. So maybe on a particular page in a website, or the particular person that you have to email, or maybe you had to create a login to an account that you had to create a username and password for, etc. But record that there, so that in 12 months' time, or the next time somebody goes to update those safe data sheets for all these manufacturers, they have to redo all that work in terms of finding that out. They should be able to look in this place, click on it, go to the website, or send an email to the person that has been recorded, or whatever. So basically, you record very briefly how you source that safe data sheet, so that when somebody goes to update that safe data sheet, they can just do the same thing again. Are documented. We have a person in each department that's going to take responsibility for COSHH. We have sourced our safe data sheets and we have assigned them to the departments. We're ready to start thinking about writing our COSHH assessments. So we have a lot of the work done with the company. We're about to look at into how we're going to write our COSHH assessments. One of is you need to decide who is actually going to write the COSHH assessments. And this is key to how successful this is going to be and how sustainable it's going to be going forward. So what here is that put together 4 different options of who can get to write your COSHH assessments. The first 2 on this page would be the 2 that we would kind of recommend less, and then the 2 on the next page would be the 2 that we would recommend more. So this option would be that your COSHH assessments are completed by someone in EHS with no input from staff. So we get an EHS manager or whoever is responsible for EHS in the company. They write all the COSHH assessments. It is a dictation exercise only, and it's the least recommended option, because the staff that are using the chemicals have learned nothing. They have no ownership of it. If you take those documents now and you put them down and you put them in an area where people are using the chemicals, if they're ever really going to pick it up and read it or pay much heed to it, because they don't have any ownership of it. It was just done for them and dropped in for them. Then is the other extreme. So that it has come by staff. So see that the COSHH assessment is completed by staff with no input at all from EHS. In the world, it is a good way to go if you can afford to have staff, every single department, fully trained in COSHH. But it's resource heavy and it's probably impractical. Um, the other problem you'd have with it is that you would find you'll have inconsistencies in quality and procedures across the whole organisation. So even though people have been trained in COSHH, they'll take their own take on it in different departments, they'll come up with different recommendations, etc., and there'll be no consistency across the organisation. But the problem with this is it is resource heavy. It is within in an industry like food and beverage, you're not going to have the time to train people fully in COSHH in a number of departments so that they can fully write assessments competently themselves without getting any input from EHS. There are two recommended options, and then the two that we would say would be better. And again, there's very little difference between these two. So the first would say is treated by EHS, but in conjunction with staff. So the EHS person doesn't just sit in their office and complete the 20 or 30 documents. They actively go down, they meet the guys and the girls in the maintenance department or the floor or whatever department it is, and they get input from them. So say, okay, you literally go down in the middle of them, you get a bit of time from them. I would say, ideally, in the work environment, not that you get the people who are doing the work up into an office and sit them down. I would say get down in their work environment so they can actually show you. So say, well, okay, this is the process. PP do you currently use? And they'll show you, well, we use these gloves, and you guys maybe have a discussion. Are they suitable? This is a corrosive product. Yes, they are, and that's ticked off. These are the gloves to use for it, and that's filled in the COSHH assessment, etc., etc. So completed by EHS, but that this person going to the floor has a conversation with the staff, and ultimately it's filled in while they're there, and that way they feel that they have some ownership of it. So they've been filled in based on how they feel, etc. And when that document is ultimately printed, put down in an area for them, or put up in a system where they can access it, it'll be familiar with it and need some ownership of it, and it'll be a useful document for them. So it's complete EHS in conjunction with staff. The last option then that would say would be a good way to go be quite similar, just a slight shift in it. It would be completed by the staff themselves, but signed off by EHS. So there would be more training required for staff. They wouldn't probably be fully COSHH trained because it's going to be checked out by someone who's fully COSHH trained afterwards, and that training could probably be even completed in-house. So what it would mean is that the themselves, they probably by the COSHH leader in the department, they the COSHH assessment, following maybe some training from EHS, but they pass that up to EHS, then EHS soften it, and it then becomes a control document. And EHS see anything that they're not happy with or doesn't fully tie up, they'd give back to the guys and they'd learn from it. So it would be it's quite similar to the previous one. The only difference is the staff sells first and then hand it over to EHS to sign off on. And either of these two options are good options. Both of these should give you a document that is actually useful to staff and is something that staff will take a bit of ownership for, feel a bit of pride in even, and hopefully then will actually follow. So who's going to write our COSHH assessments? The next we need to come up with a COSHH template. So a common mistake that people would make is that they will just look for a COSHH template that they can download somewhere, or actually sit down to look and see, does this fit our business? What it is, even if you download a COSHH assessment template, I'm quite happy with it, don't wait to look at it and see, well, do I need to tweak this in my business? Do I need to add or remove a couple of bits so that it fits us perfectly? A few points on the COSHH assessment template is, first of all, keep it simple and keep it relevant. And if you create a COSHH template that is overly complex, it will fail 100% of the time. People will not have the time or the resources to keep them to date, and people will not read them. People, when it comes to using a chemical, if there's a 10-page COSHH assessment that someone needs to review before they use a chemical, they just will not do it. They may do it the first time, but as the years go on and as time goes on, they will not be done. So keep it simple and keep it relevant. Template, designing your template, use multiple choice as possible. It's very slow, and it forces people to just copy and paste information from the safe data sheet, which is ultimately useless. Copying information from the safe data sheet doesn't achieve anything. You want to look at how you use it here and come up with a local solution for first aid, fire, etc. So what I say is pre-populate with approved statements for stuff like first aid, fire, PPE, spill control, etc. So I always take spill as a good example. If it happens on your site or in your facility, there's only a number of things that you can do. So if you leave free text, they're just going to copy and paste information off a safe data sheet, and no good to you. What we say is you sit down at the beginning of the process when you're designing your template, and you look at what options are available. So you say, look, we can use the spill kits in the blue wheelie bins, or use sand that's located in car park A, or contact the emergency response team at extension 1234. Put the approved statements in your template, and when somebody then goes to write an assessment, they just pick from these statements whatever most relevant to this product based on how they use it. It makes it quick and easy to write the assessment. It also means what you get out the other end is actually useful information. And it's a small thing to do, but I find it makes a big difference, and that is put your own logo on the template. What I say is it high ownership of the document within your organization, so it says, this is our document, we done this. So it quickly differentiates from a safe data sheet. So going right back to the beginning, I said there's very often confusion between safe data sheets and COSHH assessments, and a very quick way for people to differentiate the two is, well, our COSHH assessments have our own logo on them, and you can spot them straight away. So it's a small tip, but I find it works very well. So guides, I'm not going to go into them in detail, because it's what I say. It's what I wouldn't do in terms of going through the presentation. Basically, slides outline the key elements within a COSHH assessment. So when you're designing your COSHH template, these are the key elements that you need to make sure are included in the assessment. I'm just going to pick out one here at the very end, which we find is very often left out. And these 5 key elements, I'm going to be sending out this presentation afterwards, so you'll get to have a read of them yourselves, and you can go back with questions on them if you want. But the only one I got just going to highlight now for now is dating. I find it as a very useful tool to put some kind of a risk rating within of the template to quantify the risk of this chemical, so that all staff, when they pick up this assessment, no matter what chemical is, there should be one number color area that they go to that very quickly tells them this is a risk, this is a high risk, this is a medium risk, based on the hazard chemical and the quantity you're using or the environment you're using it in, etc. So there are a lot of different matrices, etc. you can use to come up with that rating. The most commonly used is a 5x5 matrix, but ultimately it could be as simple as just saying low, medium, or high, and including a color with it as well, so that visually people can see it quickly. It's not an absolute. It's not with it defined under COSHH legislation that you have to have it, but as it's highly recommended for any risk assessments, including these, because it's a very quick visual for the people that are going to be using the assessment to see how hazardous is this. So there's another key elements that are listed out there. They're a bit more technical, and you'll get a presentation when we send it out, and I'll be able to come back and answer questions on them for you as well. So your COSHH template, and you need to move on to actually write your assessments. So 2 points here. First, make sure that whatever format of the people that are writing your COSHH assessments you're going with, i.e. whether it is an EHS person writing it with the staff writing it, EHS signing off, or whatever way you decide to do it, it's critically sure that whoever is doing it has received the proper training, the appropriate level of training to the task that they've been assigned. A very common mistake is that someone is told, look, you have to write COSHH assessments, and to maybe Google cells or try and pull information together, and they haven't received the training. It's whatever role you give to someone, even if it's quite a basic role, and you need to sit down and maybe for a half an hour to give them a bit of training, then just ensure that that's done. If they're going to be signing off on COSHH assessments, they do need to have had proper COSHH training, and there's just no getting away from that. No matter what we do your assessments, someone is going to have proper COSHH training so that they can sign off on the COSHH assessments. The second is time. Again, that we would see is people are assigned as a person COSHH assessments, or as a person assigned to be in charge of COSHH assessments, but they're not assigned any time to do the job. So they have to do this in conjunction with their regular job, which is okay, because in organisations like yours that aren't full-time chemical companies, there's resources to allocate someone as a full-time COSHH person. So they will be someone who will have to do this in conjunction with their main job, but it's important that they're given the time, that they're told, look, you have a half day this week, or you have a day, that they are given the time to actually go and do the work. The thing I'd say is, make sure that you're doing it in with different areas, writing them themselves, they come into EHS. But what I would say is, it is very good to have a quick review, especially starting out. That maybe you start out, you spend a couple of weeks getting some of the assessments done in different areas, pull those people together to share knowledge, share queries in an open environment. So not that everyone is trying to answer queries themselves and coming up with their best solution themselves and then keeping it themselves. Pull the writing COSHH assessments together, just 15 minutes in a room together. If it has any queries, the answers in the room, and the whole room, and it'll mean that bases, etc., will be shared throughout the company. Templates will be updated, procedures will be updated as required, and you'll be able to maybe even review and close out actions or write COSHH assessments. Because like one of the reasons for writing a COSHH assessment is that you assess how you use the chemical, and a part of that assessment should be, well, to use it any safer? Is there any improvements we need to make? Do we need to maybe get a better quality glove? Could we be using a less hazardous chemical than this here? So, part of writing a COSHH assessment, you should be coming up with improvements, actions out of them, and these things can be a way to pull together to see what actions we need to do and have they been closed out, etc. Assessments written, you be sure that your staff have access to them. Again, I know I keep coming back to common mistakes, but it's just pointed out, I suppose, what we've seen in the industry. The mistake we would have seen is that maybe this person takes ownership of this, they source the same data sheets, they write the COSHH assessments, they might do some good work, but they don't give them out. They keep them in a folder in their own office, or in a folder on their own PC, and they don't actually distribute them to anyone, which all that work is ultimately useless, because the point of writing a COSHH assessment is to come up with procedures, etc., for how this chemical can be used safely within your organisation, and ultimately those procedures have to be did out to the staff that are actually using them. So you must make your COSHH assessments and your safe data sheets accessible to all staff that use the chemicals. Send them via soft copies. So if you have some kind of document management system that you use within the organisation that ideally would allow for searching and revision control, etc., that's the ideal way. But even if you don't have that, even if you have them in a folder that everyone has access to and where they know where they are. For copies, sometimes copies aren't needed in area, so hard copies are basically printed copies. Sometimes you do need them in areas, in particular in areas where people don't have access to PCs. But it's very important if you're using hard copies that very strict procedures put in place that if a C data sheet is updated or a COSHH assessment is updated, that it is also updated where the hard copies are kept. So if you are putting hard copies in a certain area, just sure that whenever they get updated, the soft copy versions then get updated, the hard copies get reprinted as well. So, a common mistake that we would see is that piece the point where we've just reached now in the presentation, that they've written their COSHH assessments, they've distributed them to their staff, they see that then as a closed project. This is now done, and they park it. But what is in a year or 2 or 3 years' time, someone will look at COSHH again, say, oh my goodness, these are all out of date, we've got in new chemicals since, this is a mess, and you have to start from scratch again. So by putting in procedures to keep your COSHH assessments and your safety strategies up to date now, you're going to be back there again. So entrance into 2 different areas. For all your existing products, so the products you currently have, keeping safe data sheets and the COSHH assessments up to date. So you should, first of all, with the safe data sheets, you should all safe data sheets ideally on an annual basis. So with the manufacturer, you should back the manufacturer at least once a year and check, is this still the current version of the safe data sheet? If you get a newer version, you should archive the old one and ensure staff only have access to the latest one. Like when you were sourcing your safe data sheets originally, they're based done centrally. So again, you don't want someone 5 different departments checking once a year to see is the same product up to date. Manage centrally, and they give access to the safe data sheets to the departments that need it. When you assessments, again, put procedures in place to review your COSHH assessments on an annual basis. Review COSHH assessments on receipt of an updated safe data sheet. For people in the beverage industry, where processes and procedures won't tend to change all that much, so chances are in 12 months' time, when you guys sit down to look at a process, look at a procedure, it's not going to have changed. So it's not going to be a big task to review your COSHH assessments. So it's worthwhile taking that time and again, get staff involved, and it literally could be only a half an hour to be in a department, meet the staff, and run through the assessments and say, okay, this is the chemical. You've told me that you guys use this this growth chemical for cleaning this vat. Has anything changed in the process, procedure, etc., etc.? Has the safe data sheet changed? We sign for it again, and again, everyone has ownership of it. So it has to be a big task once a year. It can be a very quick task because procedures, etc., don't change. But it is important that you do view them at least once a year. So this is for new products. Again, it's a place where people very rarely fall down. They get Excel file of all their products. They think everything is up to date, but a new product comes in and there's no procedure put in place for, well, how do we add this into our current system? So first, we're inventory. We would say use in place so that all products are placed on the department inventory before they come on site. So it's not that buy a new chemical into our department, we have it here on site, and we'll say, okay, we have it on site, we need to add it to the inventory. Well, it needs to be before it comes on site, so you can actually start the work and identify the hazards before they actually become a problem. Source data sheet, again, get the safe data sheet before the product is brought on site. In some way, I would see in a lot of companies that I go into, they would create procedures so that the staff member who is actually requesting the new product is tasked with sourcing the safe data sheet. So they're told, if you bring in this new cleaner, in order to get it approved, you need to go to get the safe data sheet for it first. And the reason for that is that, again, you need to see the hazards of the product before we bring it in on site. It's too late if we've got an explosive product and we bring it on site and it's here for a month, and then we go and get the safe data sheet and we find out that it's explosive. Well, it's been on our site using a hazard to our staff for the last month. So we need to have this information before we put it on site. So then comes to the COSHH assessment. In an ideal world, you write the COSHH assessment, or as much as the COSHH assessment as possible, again, before the product is put on site. So I would say that is, at very least, you identify what hazards are the product, are any unusual hazards, any new hazards to you, is there anything that jumps out from the safe data sheet before you put the product on site. Not always possible to write a full COSHH assessment for a chemical before it's on site, but very often when it comes on site, you bring it on site, it may be used differently from the previous chemical, you may have to follow instructions, and the process may not be fully ironed out until you have the chemical. So it's not always possible to complete the full COSHH assessment before it comes on site, but at the very least, you should assess the risks and look at what are the hazards and just say, well, am I introducing any new hazards here that my staff don't know about and that I don't have appropriate PPE or controls, etc. for. So just one process in place. The main point is that once you put a process in place, that everyone knows if you bring in a new chemical on site, you need to add it to your inventory, you need to get a safe data sheet, and you need to kick off the process of completing the COSHH assessment. It's too late. A year's time, we're doing our COSHH review to find, well, there's two products now, and we've been using them for the last 6 months. There's no COSHH assessment. There's no safe data sheet. You're putting your staff in danger because no one has actually assessed, is this safe to use? Is there any hazards in this that we haven't identified? So I'm just going to look back for a couple of key points very quickly that you would have heard me maybe bang on about a few times as we went through it. First of all, aspects of the process simple and easy to manage. If you make it overly complex, it will fall down. Information that's in the COSHH assessment is relevant to your staff. If you're copying and pasting information from an Excel from a safe data sheet, it is just not going to work. It is no good to you. And the next point is quite similar to that, in that staff involvement is key. You have to go down and get your staff involved in the writing of the COSHH assessment. If you're dictating COSHH assessment to them, you're not going to achieve anything. Which I've just finished on now is, do not just complete a project to update your COSHH assessments. Process that will actually keep your COSHH assessments up to date. So don't just do a one-off, write our COSHH assessments now, they're all done, park it, put a process in place so that they will all be kept up to date at all times. So the process I've told you about just now is a process managed through an Excel file, through folders, etc. in any organization. I've outlined here just a couple of points on how, if you want to use the ChemDoc system to implement this process, how we can help you. So the system is used for basically managing your inventory by site. So basically, once you have your inventory put together, we get your inventory off you. We set it up on ChemDoc to mimic your site and departments. We will source all the safe data sheets for you. So we will go to the manufacturer and we will source all the safe data sheets on your behalf. We will then have a customized COSHH tool to match your organization. So if you remember back when I talked about designing a COSHH template specific to your needs with drop-down and check boxes customized to you, well, rather than you doing that on an Excel file or a Word document, we take that information off you and we will build that into ChemDoc. So you'll have a tool on ChemDoc that will COSHH assessments using the information that you've given us. And use it for a lot more. You can print your GHS labels, you can manage your full chemical safety, you can print COSHH management reports, etc. So there's a lot of information in ChemDoc, and there's a lot of a service behind it where we source safe data sheets and we collect data off them for you as well. You see a couple of the different clients that we work with. We staff mainly in the healthcare sector. We now kind of with all types of manufacturing, etc., food, engineering, aeronautical, all types of companies. So after this webinar, I'm going to send you on an email which will give you a copy of this presentation. I'm also going to go through. I have two questions here that came in yesterday via email when I emailed you guys just see if you had any queries. I'm going to go through now and I'll put those in the email as well. And also have my own direct contact then on the. If you have any subsequent questions that you come up with, you can drop me an email back. So just brief the two questions that I was sent on yesterday by Magda. Or one by Magda. Well, she was just asking, would say, where does COSHH fit in with the BRC standard for storage and distribution? And there would be things specific in that standard relating to COSHH, but the standard would look at health and safety, and as part of that, you would be expected basically to have your COSHH management system in place. So the process I've designed now, or the process that I highlighted in the presentation that we've just done, that will, if you implement that from a COSHH view, that would cover you for the BRC standard. And the point that she asked about briefly was just about signage of cabinets, in particular toxics. So yeah, cabinets should definitely have signage or marked with what hazards are in them. But I would take a step back from that first. Is before you think about signage, you need to think about what products are stored in different cabinets, and in particular how they're segregated and how they're secured. So in the food industry, for example, your toxic chemicals, they need to be secured very away so that there's never any danger that they can come in contact with foodstuffs, etc. But also need to consider segregation from the point of view of not mixing acids and bases, etc. And a common mistake that we would get with storage, we've often gone into places and you find chemicals are stored in alphabetical order. They're very easy to find, but it doesn't make good storage from the point of view. You'll always have a couple of hazards that are together that should not be together. So if anyone wants any more information on that, you can just maybe drop me a quick email. There's a segregation table that I can send you on that will show possibly some of the classes that you shouldn't store together, etc. So the point is, before I even look at signage, I would look at segregation first and look at what is segregated where, what should be kept away from what, store according to that, and then look at your signage and obviously make sure that there's signage up to very clearly show what chemicals are in different cabinets. Last question then that I had sent in was a quick question to know that should you make different COSHH assessments for different departments for the same chemical? And so that is a definite yes. If the chemical is being used in the exact same way in a number of departments, we would say each department should write its own COSHH assessment, if for the reason only to take ownership of it in that department. But also, even though you may believe it's used in the same way, there may be different environments. So, for example, it may be a cleaning chemical used in two different in the same way, but in one environment there is a chance of exposure to maybe members of the public, or there's a chance of exposure maybe to people who may be pregnant. So, whether environment there isn't. So the controls could be different, etc. for that. So ultimately, yes, if you're using the same chemical in a number of different departments, then yes, you certainly should write a assessment for each individual department. That's for today. As I'm going to send on an email to you all after this call with this presentation, and if you have queries after that, you can send an email back, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So thank you for today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got something from it, and I'll be in touch later on today by email. Thank you very much.